Hello and welcome to the Sex Within Marriage podcast. I'm JD, marriage educator, coach, writer, and podcaster at uncoveringintimacy.com, where we offer a wide range of resources to help couples strengthen intimacy in all areas of their marriage. Today we're tackling questions from our Anonymous Have a Question page. These are questions that people had and didn't know where else to ask and were too shy to send an email. As such, I don't have any way to respond to them other than through the blog and this podcast. And I can't ask any follow-up questions, so we go with what we have. Our supporters have also discussed these questions in the forum and shared their thoughts, and in episodes like this one, I share my answers informed by my own experiences both as a husband and as a marriage coach, as well as those shared in the forum. And I apologize for my voice. I'm coming down with something and I'm starting to lose it, but I thought I'd see if I can get through this before it gets worse. So, these are questions that came in during August of this year. Question 1 is, Hi Jay, I've been following you for a while and my question is it wrong for me to want my wife to adore me during sex? I have a problem with the notion that sex is supposed to be more of a reward for men and that they're supposed to pursue it more than for women. I want my wife to pursue me. She has told me that if I do something like a chore, etc., maybe we'll have sex later. It's like a reward or incentive for me. I find this to be a real turnoff and told her, why would you think that I would want to have sex? She seemed confused when I said this. I want her to prize me and adore me, not see me as someone who has to work for her affection. For this reason, sex has actually lost most of its appeal for me. I don't want to feel like she's rewarding me for something when we have sex. I want to feel like this is how we please and satisfy each other. How do I change this dynamic? So, yeah, she separated sex from the relationship and turned herself basically into a prostitute, exchanging sex for other services. She made sex transactional instead of relational, and that's why you're not interested. Much of the world now considers only wanting sex in a loving relationship to be an oddity. It even has a name, demisexual, as if you're only partially sexual if you only have sex in loving relationships. But I believe this is how we're supposed to be. It's how we were created. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be turned off by her approach to sex and exchanging it for tasks. So, what can you do about it? I would have a discussion about it. Share that exchanging services for sex is not what you want in your marriage, and you want intimacy, not just trading favors. I don't think it would be unreasonable to set a boundary of, I will not exchange services for sex, which means if she asks you to do something in exchange for sex, you can either refuse to do the thing, or if you want a better move, do whatever it is she asks, but then turn down the sex as payment. And restate that you did it because you love her, not to get sex, and that you don't want sex as a payment because you want a wife, not a prostitute. Depending on your marriage, you may wish to word that softer. And this way you can work to reframe acts of service as a love language rather than as currency. I'd also keep listening to question 6 where we deal with gatekeeping, and I think that will apply to some of the things here too. Question 2 is, Hi Jay, my wife and I, we're both 25, married at the beginning of this year, tend to be pretty good at talking about sex, but this is a particularly awkward question and I'm not sure how to address it, so I wanted to get your advice first. Since my teen years, I've always had a really strong sex drive. When I was unmarried, I quote-unquote solved this with masturbation 2 to 3 times a week. I was able to stop porn years ago, but I didn't see masturbation without sexual fantasy as a sin until my wife convinced me of it shortly after we got married. Of course, once married, I found it pretty easy to stop masturbating. My wife also has a pretty high sex drive, and we generally have sex at least twice a week. But about 6 months into our marriage, we screwed up our birth control. My wife is now pregnant, and we're a little scared, of course, but mostly very excited. As we do our research, though, I'm also realizing that I won't be able to have sex for a while. I'm guessing for at least 3+ months, the last month of pregnancy, plus 6 to 12 weeks postpartum, sex is going to be off the table. I don't want to go back to what I am now convinced is the sin of masturbation. I also don't know how to deal with my sex drive without a sexual outlet. We've gone a few weeks without sex before, sickness, travel, etc., but never months. I literally don't think I've ever gone more than a month or so without an orgasm since I discovered masturbation in my teens. It isn't even the intimacy part. My wife is aware that the newborn can suck up all the attention and leave husbands feeling abandoned, and she's promised she'll be conscious to try to prevent that. I just don't know how I'm going to go without sexual release for so long. It's kind of what makes this such a hard question to discuss. It just feels crass/base and a little like I'm an animal who can't exercise self-control over his physical desires. I know 1 Corinthians 7 and the duty to sex, and that we can have manual and oral sex when she isn't able to have PIV yet, but should I even be asking for that? It feels pretty selfish to be saying, hey, I know you've just brought a new life into this world and your whole body is going through massive shock, but I need you to give me an orgasm. So how should I address this? I know some wives actually get hornier after giving birth, and that would solve my fears here, but that's a coin toss, and many women actually lose their sex drive for a while after birth. And if she isn't in the mood, is it okay to ask this of her when she's likely perpetually exhausted from caring for a newborn? On the occasions where she isn't in the mood now, she's happy to indulge me if need be, but with the stress of pregnancy/newborn, I feel like it might be selfish to ask in the same way. Or maybe I just need to exercise real self-control in this area of my life for once. Though I don't know how I'll manage that, I feel like my sexual desires go totally insane after several weeks of celibacy. Probably the fact that I've trained my body since hitting puberty to be able to expect orgasm pretty often, thanks to years of masturbation, has made this problem way worse. If this is the correct path, I'd love any tips/advice on keeping celibate/self-controlled given my strong libido. So, first off, congrats on the baby. You may have quote-unquote screwed up your birth control, but kids are amazing. I often say that they will destroy your life in the best way possible. Yes, that's going to come with some changes. However, generally, there's no reason to stop having sex during pregnancy. Some medical concerns can cause a doctor to recommend stopping, but for the vast majority, sex is actually good. For birthing in particular, her orgasms can start labor when it's ready. Generally, it's not a concern if they're not ready. And semen can help, quote-unquote, ripen the cervix, which can speed up labor in a healthy way. So, unless your doctor says otherwise, don't stop having sex until the baby gets there. The general recommendation after birth is 6 weeks. Some wives don't want to wait that long. Some wish to wait longer. I honestly don't know how long we waited for each. A decade or more later, and you likely won't either. So if you've gone weeks before without sex, you can do it again. It likely won't be months. And yes, it's a good opportunity to learn patience and self-control, but you're also likely to be quite tired. The best thing to do is talk about it beforehand, but also recognize that neither of you knows what you're getting yourself into. If this is your first kid, it's all going to be new. You may set an intention of giving sexually during this time, but sometimes you get into it and realize, I don't have anything left right now. The point is to go through it together. Build a plan, but then don't just leave the plan as is and assume that it'll work out. Instead, keep touching base, adjusting the plan, and then keeping each other in the loop on how you're feeling, dealing with it, what you both need, and what you're able and willing to do for each other. This should be the model for marriage at all times, really, but especially when life is difficult, like after the birth of a child, especially your first one. And it's true that sometimes the choices we make in our past come back to haunt us, but you'll be okay. You won't die. Keep communication open, talk through the temptations and struggles, make a plan, and then be gracious to each other if everything doesn't go according to that plan. All right, question 3 is a quick one. They say, I don't know if this has ever been asked, but my wife and I are having a hard time finding lube that doesn't give her a UTI. We tried several different products. We can't seem to find a great water-based lube. Any input would be appreciated. Thanks, Steve. So I hear good things about Sliquid's H2O lube. There's a link to it in the show notes. I haven't tried it myself, but its pH range is ideal for vaginal use. Good water-based lubes are hard to find. If you're sensitive, often they're loaded full of preservatives and thickeners, which is what your wife could be reacting to. Other than that, the general recommendation for UTIs from sex is also to make sure that you go pee right after sex. I know it's a little unsexy to get up from cuddling and go to the bathroom, but if you're struggling with UTIs, it might be worth it. Now, if other people out there have a recommendation for a water-based lube and have struggled with UTIs and this doesn't cause one, please come to the website, stick yours in the comments. That would be fantastic. Let's see if we can get some crowdsourced product recommendations going. All right, question 4 is, all 9 of my previous girlfriends and first wife had affairs with other guys. When I found out, I didn't object, and in fact, I was curious about them exploring their sexual independence. They all seemed to love it that I asked them questions, and in fact, they eventually flaunted it. I thought it was cool that they were so sexual, and it turned me on. Guys pursued each of them. I acted big. All the guys wanted what I had. The funny thing is, all of them eventually left me for other, well-built, very physical guys. We all live in the same town. When I see them, they still flaunt it. My current wife, after long exploring our life and loves, knows everything and now has started dating other guys too. I'm not sure what they see in me that I don't know. Signed, FH. Now, I think this question is fake, but I think it serves as a decent warning about the trend of having open marriages and a big rise in cuckold fantasies. And honestly, this seems pretty obvious to me. You didn't demand respect, and so they gave you none. You wanted other people to want what you had, and so they took it, and you encouraged them to do it. Of course they left. Why would they stay? You told them that your relationship isn't special, and they can create connections with whoever they want. So they did. From a physiological standpoint, you let them have sex with other people, which releases a lot of hormones that make you feel in love. So yeah, they had sex with other guys, got infatuated. New relationship energy is more exciting than long-term oxytocin-based love, and off they go because there was nothing special about your relationship. So I would say they didn't leave you. You opened the door and invited people to come take them. After 10 relationships with the same pattern, it's not much of a stretch to believe that the 11th would turn out the same way. I know exactly what they see in you, someone who doesn't care enough about the relationship to protect it. So stop doing that. Keep sex between the two of you and demand the same from your spouse. All right, question 5 is, hello, thank you for all your hard work. Quick question, do women prefer or tend to prefer a larger penis / more girth after birth because their vagina has been stretched? Or does birth change female sensitivity? I asked my own wife and she answered that she felt no change in her sensitivity after carrying 2 children. Thank you for your insight, Victor. So I actually did a survey on penis and breast size about 5 years ago. There's a link to it in the show notes. And from both my surveys and interactions with couples over many years, it's generally the men who are preoccupied with the idea of a larger penis. About half of the men we surveyed wished they were thicker. The wives, on the other hand, seemed quite content. 80% of them liked them the length that they are, and 76% said that they liked the thickness that it was. I didn't ask specifically about childbirth. However, what I suspect is that childbirth brings more control, or at least more ability to relax and accept more. After giving birth, some wives, not all, find that they enjoy manual sex with more fingers than before. It's not that the sensitivity changes, but it opens up a wider range of sensations, either due to the muscle control or the experience lets them relax and enjoy those sensations more. But no, you don't need a larger penis. The nice thing about manual sex is that you can add fingers as desired. And lastly, we have question 6. This person writes, hello, JD. I am sad. My wife is a gatekeeper, and I don't know what to do. I want to love my wife. I really want to explore our love life and be romantic with her. I really want her to feel pleasure. When we dated, she seemed to be into romance. I am. I felt that we were compatible early on in our relationship. When we got married and started our sex lives, she revealed herself to be prudish, starfish. Taking steps in our love life has been on my part. We have made some slow progress, but she is still in the driver's seat in terms of frequency. Ultimately, as a responsive desire person, she decides when and when not to have sex. It's difficult to develop your sex life if willingness to explore is low and your wife is a gatekeeper. Your advice for spontaneous husbands like me is to be better at initiating. I have tried different things. Number 1 is suggesting, hey, let's have sex. And she made it clear several times that this makes her feel under pressure. It turns her off and makes her feel insecure. I pointed out that she does the exact same thing. She agreed and then asked her how she would prefer. I made a suggestion and she does not know. As a responsive type, she has expressed that she needs to get in the mood by doing things together before sex. Fair. We only have time in the evenings because of work and kids. Usually we end up doing what she likes and go to sleep because she's tired after doing her preferred activity. Movie, board games, etc. I've suggested the monogamy board game because she likes playing. It would spice an activity she likes up, but she has rejected that idea. If we end up having sex, she will often starfish me because the get in the mood activity has made her tired. It seems to me that sex is her absolute last priority, even though she says it's important to her. 3 is, I have tried sexy text messages, but they make her feel uncomfortable, she said, and I almost never get anything sexy in return. I just feel ignored. 4, I tried to compliment her, send her sweet text messages, express what I appreciate about her daily or weekly. It makes her glad, and she's very loving and caring, but it doesn't translate into the bedroom. And 5, I've tried being more direct with sexy but open comments. Will you undress here or in the bedroom? And it hasn't been successful. I am discouraged. Is just not in the mood very often, and I don't seem to be able to do much about it, even though I'm attractive and romantic and willing to try new stuff. I want to pursue her and be proactive, but she's clearly training me to be passive and boring, and I grow more vulnerable to temptation. And she knows this very clearly. She knows her rejections hurt me and make me tempted to look at pornography. Am I missing something important? Could you help me? Sincerely, August. And honestly, it's likely a lot of things, many of which are impossible to tackle from one side of the marriage alone. All these things you're trying to do work when you have someone who is willing to engage sexually. If the two of you both realize that she has responsive desire and both want to work together to work with that, then some of these things might work. But some just won't at all. You said that you suggest with, hey, let's have sex, but you put a question mark on the end of it. So that's not a suggestion, it's a question. And you just asked basically if she's in the mood, and she has responsive desire, so she's probably not. Don't ask that question. It's not going to get you anywhere. All you're going to do is make her think about whether she's in the mood or not, and the answer is going to be no. You've basically just primed her to say no to sex. Sexy text messages when she's not turned on at all will have the same effect. You're trying to play catch with a wall and getting upset that the wall isn't throwing the ball back. Now, complimenting her is good. Complimenting her in order to get sex is bad, because all that means is that she's now going to interpret all compliments as attempts to buy sex instead of an authentic compliment. And being more direct is good, but not if she isn't comfortable with the idea of sex, which it sounds like she isn't. You both seem to make the same mistake most people do when dealing with responsive desire. You say she's not in the mood very often, she won't be. So that should not be the measure of whether or not to have sex by you or by her. And that is really, I think, the core problem in your marriage when it comes to sex. You are both waiting for someone with responsive desire to be in the mood for sex. A better approach would be being willing to be aroused, which she doesn't appear to be. And that's the core issue. She doesn't want to be turned on. Now, whatever the reason for that is, I don't know. I can make some educated guesses, but at the end of the day, she has to want to change her perspective on that. You can't force her. Now, what you can do is open a conversation and see if she'll be convicted. And it won't be you convicting her, it will be her convicting herself. To that end, I recommend reading an ebook I wrote called Where Did My Sex Drive Go?, as it will give you a framework, a place to start talking about it productively, and some ideas of dynamics that will better work for both of you. And then you hope and pray that she wants better for you both. And I could go on with that if she's interested. I have a whole course on that stuff. I think there's a link to it in that book as well. But your next step, I would say, is read that ebook. Where Did My Sex Drive Go? There's a link to it in the show notes. You can get it for free. And I get lots and lots of emails from people saying this is what started to turn their marriage around. And that's it for today. As always, if you have a question, you can either join the supporters forum and ask it there or on the website. If you disagree with any of my answers or you want to add your own thoughts, feel free to do so in the comment section. I would love to have more conversation, more community, to have Christians leading discussions about sex. And that's hard to start at home. It's hard to start in your church, but here you have an opportunity. You can be anonymous on the website as well as in the forum, and just share your thoughts and get used to the idea of talking about sex so that we can teach people, help them in their marriages, help them in their lives, and show them what God intended for marriages. That's it for today. Talk to you next time.